Today is Wednesday, November 23rd, the day before Thanksgiving. We're about 45 minutes after sunset, which occurred at 4:22 today. It's about 5 o'clock. You can see we still got some glow to the south and west. Something extraordinary happened today. I've never been able to get the scope to line up on Jupiter before. I thought it had lost its settings. But after I spent a good deal of time redoing alignments and after replacing the battery, she lined right up on Jupiter and Saturn. So I did spend a good deal of time mucking once again with the right ascent, with the azimuth and the declination. I do believe I've improved things, but without being able to see Polaris, it gets very difficult. What I'm doing right now is I'm waiting for sky dark so I can do a very simple but complex thing. My fellow astronomers, Dean and Elmarco, suggested that I check out Stephan's Quintet. Now, it's a group of about five galaxies that are closely packed, have been imaged by NASA through this Hubble, I believe probably soon by the James Webb, but they're very close together. The faintest one is magnitude 16. Hard to believe that it could be seen even in a large amateur scope. However, I am going to check it out because I believe on a very good night should be able to see galaxies down to 15.5. So how many of them I can see using the Rev2 imager is going to be the challenge. So meanwhile, these are some preliminary set points that I'm going to restore to my fullest sensitivity possible in order to see how deep we can get with Stephan's Quintet. It is a ARP, I believe it's also called ARP 319. So that is the goal for this evening, and once we get a view of that, I hope to tour some more galaxies that I have yet to actually capture for the series. So there you see that very dark, oh look, that's very nice. So street light on one side and Jupiter on the other of the OTA, of the 6-inch refractor. Okay, here's our baseline study right here. It's NGC 7448. It's that 12th magnitude galaxy that gives a good view of an H2 region. And some extensions from the core. I'm not getting too bad a view. It's a pretty decent night overhead, although there's some variable factors like smoke from neighboring fireplaces that can sometimes cause obscuration. Now I wanted to make sure I got a halfway decent view of this. We're pole flipped now to get to the galaxies that I want to look at. It's a Seyfert group, ARP 319 I believe, otherwise known as Stephan's Quintet. So I'm thinking that's not a bad view of 7448, and I'll have to compare that to other views, but it does look like there's some decent extensions on it. So let's go to 7320 now and see what kind of view we're going to get of that Stephan's Quintet, and I'll have more to say about that at the time. I do believe the brightest of the 5 galaxies that Stephan discovered in the observatory in Marseille, and I believe it was 1877, is included in the Dreyer catalog as NGC 7320. It's magnitude 12.6. It's almost twice as long as it is wide, 2.3 by 1.4 arc minutes. It's a class spiral with a core, but it's considered a D, and I haven't seen that one before. 38 mega light years distant. And here's our view, and frankly, this galaxy group was discovered using a 32-inch reflecting telescope that was designed by Foucault. And Foucault basically was a theoretician and a practitioner who basically developed the idea of making a paraboloid rather than a spherical mirror, because in a spherical mirror all the beams of light don't come to a single point of focus. but by deepening up the core a little bit of a mirror with a nice, smooth, regular finish, the light, all the beams would come back to a common focal point. It's called a parabolic mirror, and they're commonly used today. The telescope was actually built by another telescope maker. I don't know his name, but it was one of the first to have been silvered rather than being a speculum type mirror. Now, as far as I can tell, there are numerous galaxies in this view of 7320, and you can see several of them right there. They're those hazy locations there. There's some core visibility. Now, I'm holding up the camera, so I'm not actually looking at the screen. But the core group is very small. It's probably not much more than 5 or 10 arc minutes across. But if you look at the rest of the screen, you can see other hazy nebulosities that appear to be galaxies as well outside of that region that was originally discovered by Stephan at the Marseille Observatory. I'm actually very impressed. The faintest of those 5 galaxies is supposed to be magnitude 16, and I don't think this scope will reach magnitude 16 with even with the Rev2 imaging system set on the longest possible stacking and exposure. But there's quite a few galaxies in here. I believe this group of galaxies is also known as ARP 319. I'll have to check that. I'll leave a caption if I got it wrong. Now, ARP galaxies are galaxies that are galaxy groups. Now, the brightest galaxy here in this group, however, is actually nearer than the rest of them. So it's not actually part of the group. Now, I'm scanning the field here. I have other NGC designations for galaxies in this group, and I will show you the data on them, all 5 of Stephan's Quintet, although we may not be able to identify which is which without looking at some kind of a chart. There you go. Stephan's Quintet. It's showing up quite nicely, thank you. Simply advancing using the next button on this handset. We've jumped to 7320A. It's also part of Stephan's Quintet. Now this baby is supposed to be magnitude 16. I would never expect to see it. I figure galaxies down to magnitude 15 can be detected using the Rev2 and the longest exposure times. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the Go To button, and I'm going to hold this up so we get an idea what direction at least the mount, the G11 mount, thinks this thing is in. So here we go. I just made the slightest adjustment. I couldn't tell exactly. Now the galaxies are going to take a while to come back into... Oh, here we go. Now it's regenerating the image. And frankly, I'm not seeing anything on the handheld. I'm seeing some nebulosities apparently forming around a star, and I'm not sure if it's the same one, but there's a brightish star there. Here's a brighter one, here's a fainter one, and it looks like some nebulosities are forming around it. Now, which of them might possibly be the 16th magnitude galaxy is beyond me. As I said, I didn't expect we'd actually be able to see it on the screen. I believe there's a galaxy 7317 in this series too, and I'll have to actually pump that one in and see what happens. Well, whatever galaxy is 7317 is a magnitude 13.6, 7 by 0.6 arc minutes, 301 million light years away. Not sure it's part of this group, but we're going to go ahead and make the leap to it just in order to get a sense of whether or not it is part of this group. Couldn't tell you. I don't think we made much of an adjustment here. I'm going to give the image a chance chance to form. Yep, I see some in the handheld popping up. Clearly not in line of sight at 301 million light years. What I would say about Stephan's quintet, I believe there are 4 galaxies that are actually all co-located in space. They are expected to converge at some point. And when they do, their total mass will combine. Vast number of stars will form, and they will become what is called an elliptical galaxy at that point, because they will be stripped of most of their dark, cold matter. And they will no longer be flat, spiraling galaxies like a disk. They will become much more like a football at that point, known as an elliptical. I think that's about our best view. So apparently 7317 was part of that group. I'll have to check the star patterns out later, but it does look like that's the case. Let's go to 18 and see if that's in the group. So here we have an NGC 7318A, 303 million light years distance, so it's obviously grouped with 73, 17. Magnitude 13.4, a little larger, 1.2 by 1 arc minute in size. It's an elliptical galaxy, so it may or may not have a well-defined core. But there's a class of ellipticals that are not actually spirals, but they aren't actually fully populated with stars because they haven't really combined with other ones. So let's go take a look at it. Oh, there's another one of those tiny little leaps. So this is part of the group as well. And now our image will have to regenerate itself because we did move a couple of arc minutes. Once again, the best image you get is just above that dark band. And I'm pretty sure that's a handheld camera characteristic, not the screen characteristic, because I don't see that kind of a band across it when I look at it with my own eyes. So there we go. That's 7318A, and there should be a B and possibly a C. 7318b is clearly part of whatever galaxy group we've been talking about here. The 4 galaxies that are very close together actually in space. It's magnitude 13.1, 1.6 by 1.1 arc minutes. It's a complex galaxy. It's a spiral, but it's got a capital B and little b, which means it has some arm components, but also is distended. Ooh, this one says it's only 264 million light years distant, which would put it at a different distance, and it would not necessarily be part of the ARP 317, I believe is what it was. And here we go on to the screen. And you can see it's shifting over this direction a little bit now. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we've had lots of views now of this galaxy group. Very cold out. I'm not sure if I already covered this one, but this is 7319, magnitude 13.1, 1.4 by 1.1 arc minutes. It's a complicated galaxy, a spiral with both a capital B and little b, which means it has spiral arms, or that it's got a spread out disk. at the same time. 302 million light years distance. It's part of the same ARP group of galaxies. I will press the go to on this one, and we'll see what kind of a change in position we get. You can see the stars jumped a little bit to the top of the screen. So this would obviously have been one of the galaxies closer to the bottom of the screen if it made that leap. And then they are again. Moving on. I'm just progressing through the handset now in the database associated with the G11. 7321. I do not believe it's not part of the group. It's 319 million light years distance. Fairly bright, 12.9, 1.6 by 1.1 arc minutes. So I'm expecting that we'll make a bit of a jump, although I haven't been paying attention to the right ascension and declination. Yeah, we are making a leap. Asta, ARP, and Stephan's Quintet. Let's see if we get something here. Should be a fairly bright, large galaxy when it forms. Sweeping the screen. I'm not seeing it yet. Oh, I'm seeing something begin to form though. Obviously, like most times when I'm looking towards the zenith, I'm in a very awkward position here with the handheld camera. Yeah, there's a galaxy forming right above the dark line, the dark band. I'm going to try to take a look at it myself without the camera. Yeah, it's forming. So this should be NGC 7321. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't dozens of other galaxies here, everywhere we look, off the axis of the Milky Way. And the Milky Way does look pretty good tonight. I would say it's better than marginal seeing, probably pushing it up a little bit. Except for the occasional smoke. Yeah, there's our galaxy just above the band from wood fires in the neighborhood, and potentially some high thin clouds overhead. By the way, tonight is the new moon, so it's about as dark as the sky is going to get from the point of view of Luna. We're going to go back to 7448 just for a last view and check the conditions before I say Carpe Noctem. Once again, we're having a look at a little bit of a bellwether galaxy I've been following for a while. This is NGC 7448 in Pegasus. That's not overhead like Stephan's Quintet was. It's kind of more towards the equator in Pegasus. But it's a great galaxy when it shows really well through the sky. Definable core with extensions, and an H2 region is what I look for when I'm getting the best views. That's the view I'm getting now. And I'll have to review the video to determine whether it's as good as I've seen it. But there's the nice view. So a good night, Carpe Noctem to all on the new moon, Wednesday, November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving. And we should all give thanks for all the things the universe has been giving us. Carpe Noctem.